And hello and welcome everyone who has come all the way from all different countries. But I could not join physically, but I'm here in Pune in my campus, Flame University. And I noticed that you do have one speaker from Jainism, that is me, and then when you have also from Buddhism, I think that's tomorrow. Other than that, I think most of the talks are coming from different shades, different varieties of Hindu/Sanatan/Vedic system. So here it is, representing Jainism. So word itself, this God word itself does not exist in Jainism, as I hope everyone already is aware of. So that is what I'm going to cover in my talk, and then I'll cover some of the historical aspects as well. Introduction. Since prehistoric times, India has witnessed two distinct traditions. They can be viewed as two parallel streams, one being the Vedic culture and the other being the Shamanic culture. Vedic culture is sometimes called or can be referred as Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma. Under the broad category of Shamanic cultures, there are two distinct religions, Jainism and Buddhism. This paper will attempt to study Jainism's foundations, philosophy, sociology, and theology, and provide comparisons with its counterparts, Hinduism and Buddhism. Foundation, definitions of Jainism. The term Jaina or Jain, like Buddha, is a designation that means follower of a Jina. The Jinas are spiritual victors and human teachers, are said to have attained Keval Gyan or Gnan, omniscience or infinite knowledge, and preach the doctrine of moksha or liberation. They are also called as Tirthankaras, a builder of the ford. Tirthankaras are the builders of the ford or a bridge that leads across the ocean of suffering. Hence, a Jina or Tirthankara is not the founder of a new religion. He is a propagator, he or she is a propagator of truth and a path taught in the same manner by all teachers of his ever-present imperishable tradition. Each Jina reanimates this tradition for the benefit of the succeeding generations. These teachings are not received through divine revelation. Still, they culminate in an extremely strict penance that purifies the practitioner to realize this truth within one's soul. The authority of the Jain teachings rests ultimately on the fact that an omniscient being preached them. Thus, they are unverifiable and dogmatic as those accepted by an Orthodox Muslim or Christian. Although Jainism and Jain or Jaina, sometimes pronunciation differs depending on whose word I'm quoting from. So Jainism and Jain society may appear much less diverse than Hinduism. A deeper study finds it as varied and complex as any other tradition. The Jain practitioners range from ascetics to yogis, encyclopedists, tantric, erotic poets, aesthetic theorists, kings, political theorists, temple builders, image worshippers, heroic worshippers, iconoclasts, religious women, business people, and scholars, and on and on. Rishabh is considered the first Tirthankar of this time cycle, which runs into billions of years, and founded social institutions such as agriculture and the Varna system, the social classes. He is also mentioned in the Vedas. However, Hinduism considers Manu, an ancient sage, the founder of social institutions. The last Tirthankara was Vardhaman Mahavir, born in 599 BCE in Vaishali, Bihar, India. Before him were Parshva and Nemi. Unlike other religions, Jainism does not believe in the theory of a world-creating God for two reasons. First, creation is impossible without a desire to create, which implies imperfection on the part of the alleged creator. Second, if karma dictates the destinies of human beings, then God is irrelevant. If he rules regardless of the karma of beings, then he is cruel and capricious, according to Jainism. In India, Jains are grouped with Hinduism in the Indian Constitution and the Hindu Marriage Act and the Hindu Undivided Family Accounting Act. However, Jains have started actively opposing this, and in May 2006, prominent Jain community leader met with President of India to request that Jainism be declared a minority religion, a separate religion, which has now been granted. So Jainism now is a legally distinct religion, just as Buddhism or Sikhism is in India. I think I'll skip the historical spread of Jainism. If I have time, I'll maybe come back to it. Also, I think I'll skip schism in Jainism. If I have time, I'll come back to it. I'm going to now philosophy of Jainism. The main doctrine of Jainism is called as Anekantvad, which means the doctrine of manifold aspects. Professor Arvind Sharma at McGill University in Canada has given one of the best one-line definitions of this doctrine. Jainism accepts the reality of plurality, that is, a plurality of realities. Scholars have attributed the origin of this doctrine to two different ideas. the soul's existence and intellectual ahimsa, non-violence. According to some scholars, this doctrine arises of necessity from the Jain theory of the soul, jiva. In contrast to the Buddhists, the Jains insisted on the definite existence and eternality of the soul. Soul is eternal. At the same time, in comparison to various schools such as Sankhya, Vedanta, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and Mimamsa, which argued for the unchanging nature of the soul and said either that any changes were related to material nature, prakriti, or that the perception of change was due to ignorance, avidya, the Jains argued that the soul changes over time, both in terms of its various qualities such as knowledge, bliss, and energy, and in terms of its multiple states such as bound or free. Jains insisted that both statements are true. The soul is eternal and the soul undergoes changes. As described by Padmanabh Jaini, late Padmanabh Jaini at UC Berkeley, citing the late 13th century Syadvad Manjari by Shvetambara scholar Mallisena, because the qualities are innumerable and their modes are infinite, stretching from the beginningless past to the endless future, an ordinary, non-omniscient person cannot perceive the existence in its entirety. He can now know either the substance's persisting unity, ekatva, or its modes, transient multiplicity, anekatva. This complexity of the existent, its simultaneous unity and multiplicity, eternity and transience, finds expression in the Jain term anekant, manifold aspects, which purport to fully describe the existence nature. According to another group of scholars, this doctrine developed directly from the extension of the intellectual ahimsa, non-violence. According to them, Jainism goes beyond advancing a two-pronged wrong or right analysis of arguments in the style of Aristotle or the fourfold analysis of reality in Hinduism or Buddhism. Within the Upanishads, we find a fourfold analysis of reality: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and the fourth state of Turiya, wherein one identifies with the highest self. Similarly, Nagarjuna's Madhyamika school of Mahayana Buddhism rejects the four corners of reality: existence, non-existence, existence, and non-existence, and neither existence nor non-existence. Instead, the Jains brought forth a sevenfold analysis of reality that specifically disallows the holding of any extreme view. Syadvad, next section, Syadvad and Nayas, partial truths. Now let us see the sevenfold views, Nayas, of the reality of Jainism. First, Naigama. The common point of view is a generalized way of referring to an object in which the viewer does not distinguish between generic and specific characteristics. This results in a general, sufficient, publicly acceptable description such as a table. Table is a table. Common view of a table. Second, Sangraha, the general point of view, describes an object in terms of its generic characteristics or the general categories it fits, such as the category of all tables or tableness in a common table. Third, Vyavahara, the specific or practical point of view, describes an object in terms of its particular characteristics and shows how it differs from other objects in the same generic category, such as the specifics of this particular table, its height or width, for example. Fourth, Riju Sutra, literally straight thread, is the immediate here and now point of view in which the object is contextualized in terms of time and place. From this perspective, the possibility of change over time and space is recognized. The table is viewed in terms of its existence at time X, at place Y, here and now. Fifth point, Shabda, the verbal point of view, looks at the words used in terms of grammar, its placement and function in a sentence. From this perspective, in the sentence, the table is made of wood. That word table is the object of a preposition. And in the sentence, I move the table, the word table is a verb. Sixth, Sambhiruddha, literally the subtle point of view, is the etymological point of view. It makes an assumption common with modern linguistic theory that few true synonyms exist. Here, table is viewed as derived from the Latin tabula, flat board, and distinguished from other words such as desk or counter. Seventh and last is evam bhuta, literally thus happened. This restricts a word to a single unique meaning, which can be used only if that function is being carried out. Thus, I cannot use the word table if I'm sitting on it. I can only use it if I'm sitting at it. Any of these 7 points of view is a relative one-sided ekatva perspective presenting a partial and imperfect view of the truth. A judgment based on one or a few of these perspectives is ultimately only partially true. A judgment is impartial only if it encompasses all 7 points of view and is thus adequately many-sided or not one-sided, literally anekant, anekant, anekant. Ek is one, anek, non-one, multiple, anekant, non-one-sided. The second part of Anekantvad is the closely related tool known alternatively as the doctrine of conditional assertion, Tyadvad, and the doctrine of sevenfold predication, Saptabhangi Naya. This tool is based on the recognition that the number of statements one can make about an object is limited, depending on the possibility that the number of statements one can make are limited, depending on the possibilities of positive and negative attribution, as well as the possibility that the nature of the object might be inexpressible. Combining these can lead to only 7 possible statements. This can be tabulated as follows, with plus positive indicating positive attributions, minus indicating negative attributions, and 0 indicating inexpressibility. So 7 ways one can express: positive, negative, positive and negative, inexpressible, positive and inexpressible, negative and inexpressible, finally positive, negative and inexpressible, all at the same time. Jain logicians nuance these 7 possibilities by prefacing each statement with the Sanskrit indeclinable particle seat, meaning that each statement is from a specific and therefore relative point of view and thus should be stated in a conditional form. The resulting 7 possible statements can be seen as follows. First, from a certain perspective, the table exists, positive. Second, from a certain perspective, the table does not exist, negative. Third, from a certain perspective, the table exists, and from another perspective, it does not exist, plus and minus. Fourth, from a certain perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible, 0. Fifth, from a certain perspective, the table exists, and from another perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible, positive and 0. Sixth, from a certain perspective, the table does not exist, and from another perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible, negative and 0. Seventh, from a certain perspective, the table exists. From another perspective, the table does not exist. And from the third perspective, the nature of the table is inexpressible, positive, negative, and 0. Now, next section is Jain criticism of non-Jain philosophies. Jains claim that non-Jain systems are defective in that they view being Sat in only a single aspect, Ekant, either as eternal, Nitya, or non-eternal, Anitya. So they are critiquing both Vedanta and Buddhism now, right? Unchanging, aparinamin, or changing parinamin. The Vedanta system's monistic Advaita school maintaining that the being is unitary, Ek, and that this being called Brahman is eternal and unchanging. It denies the existence of the phenomenal world, that is multiplicity and change, relegating it to the realm of illusion, Vivarta. Another Vedic school, Samkhya, is dualist and postulates 2 kinds of being, one an eternal but constantly changing, Parinamanitya, mind-matter complex, Prakriti, unchangeable, Kutastha Nitya, souls, Purushas. Prakriti is conceived similarly to the Jaina view of the total range of being, but Purusha resembles the Brahman of Advaita. Consequently, the Samkhyas too end up saying that the bondage of Purusha by the Prakriti is illusory and not to be taken as real. Jainism maintains that both these schools can be categorized as extremist. Ekantavad, since they propound a one-sided dogma of eternalism, Nityavad. They are said by the Jains to perceive only the substance aspect of the existent, denying its modal aspect. Thus, they cannot explain the true nature of bondage or teach the path of liberation. Now, on the other hand, the Buddhists, particularly the Abhidharmikas, who uphold a doctrine of discrete, niranvaya and momentary, kshanikta elements, dharmas, are also considered ekantavadis of the opposite type, following the dogma of non-eternalism, anityavad. They deny the reality of an abiding substance, dravya or atman, accepting the existence of only what should be modes in Jainism. This denial of substance, according to Jainism's critiques, makes it impossible for the Buddhists to explain logically either bondage or karma, samsara, or the release from this bondage, nirvana. Hence, Jains reject this annihilationist, uchchedavadin doctrine. Now, all these objections raised by the Jains are found in the writings of Ramanuj and Madhva. Also, some of the Advaitic trends crept into Jainism. There was a trend to reconcile Jainism with Advait and other systems of Indian philosophy. For instance, Yasho Vijay, a 17th century Jain writer, polyglot, proclaims that Jainism does not quarrel with any other system of Indian thought. So there was also an attempt to reconcile everything. Now, next section, subsection, comparative philosophies of Jainism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. We have been doing that already, but the next subsection. The three religious traditions, Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, can be seen as a middle path between the other two. How? Hinduism, the householder Brahmins, can be seen as a middle way between the two extremes of celibate ascetics of Shamanic culture and the complete materialistic outlook of Charvakas. Bhagavad Gita's Karma Yoga is a middle way between the life of action, karma, and total renunciation, sannyasa. Next point, Buddhism. It claims to be the middle ground between Jain penances, tough austerity, and Hindu householders' relaxed worldly lives. Next point, Jainism. Renunciation. In Buddhism, one can renounce a family without caring for their emotions as the Buddha did. Hinduism allows renunciation only in the sannyasa ashram around the age of 75. Jainism's idea of renunciation is somewhere between these two ideas. For example, Vardhaman Mahavir neither rejected his parents' consent nor waited until his old age for renunciation. He became a wandering mendicant when he was 30, before renouncing his worldly life. Scriptures for laity. That was the next point. Scriptures for laity. Most Vedic scriptures have elaborate instructions and rules for common people, apart from those for kings and Brahmins. The scriptures of Buddhism have ignored the laity and focused solely on the monks, ascetics. Jain scriptures may once again fall in the middle of both Hindu and Buddhist scriptures, as demonstrated by the substantial number of Shravakachar, books for the discipline of lay people. Next point. Karl H. Potter, the famous encyclopedist, puts Jainism at the center of the progress philosophy between the two ends of the leap philosophy of Charvakas and Ajivika. Next point, Atman. Hinduism accepts the existence of both Atman and Brahman, most clearly in the Dvaita system of Madhva. Buddhism denies the ultimate reality of both and propounds the concept of Shunyata. Jainism can be seen as a midpoint between these two views. It accepts Atman's existence but rejects Brahman and Shunyata's concepts, which are respectively in Hinduism and Buddhism. All right, next section is theological comparison of Jainism and Hinduism. I have the references for all these sections, but I'm skipping all of them, obviously for lack of time. Both Hinduism and Jainism are quite different based on their basic soteriological foundations. While in the former case, grace from God is the main factor in an individual's spiritual progress, Jainism advocates one's effort for that goal. This difference is demonstrated in the theologies of both religions. In a recent book on Jainism, Open Boundaries, Lawrence A. Bobb, it's no longer recent now, it's pretty old, it's about 2 decades back, I think, has painstakingly compared the rituals in a major Vaishnava Hindu sect, Pushti Marg, and the Jain sect, Shwetambaras. Lawrence Bobb goes on to show the many similarities in the tradition of Shaivism and Jainism. Here, the deity Shiva is ascetic, similar to the Jain Tirthankaras. Hence, there is no transaction between the deity and the devotee. However, scholars such as Richard H. Davis and Indira Vishwanathan Peterson show significant hostility toward Tamil Shaivites against Jains in the same book. The major difference in the rituals of Pushti Marg and Shwetambar. For simplicity, I will refer to the first as Vaishnavism and the latter as Jainism. Vaishnavism strongly emphasizes transactions between worshippers and worshipped, but Jains do not transact with their temple deities, Tirthankaras, in their rituals. Worship in the first is dense, while that in the other is null. Both have food offerings to the deities. However, in the first case, in the Hindu case, it's offered to God and accepted as a prasad, grace, that nourishes and supports the devotee. Jains use food in a worship as a ritualized renunciation of food, which is eventually turned to the non-Jain priest of the temple and not to the deities, as Tirthankaras cannot accept anything beyond ascetic themselves. Also, the Jain devotees trying to symbolize renunciation cannot take anything back from the deities. In Jainism, the connection between worshipper and worshipped ranges from metaphorical to analogical. It cannot be tangible or substantial. Closure between the worshipper and worshipped is brought about only by tightening metaphor into an analogy. resulting in resemblance but not contact. Vaishnavism stresses intimacy between the two. It recognizes four principal emotional attitudes the devotees can assume about God: servant to master, friend to friend, parent to child, and lover to beloved. Okay, next section is social issues, societal issues. I think I'll skip that for lack of time. Interaction of Jains with people or the. I'm not sure how much time I have.
Can you hear me?
Yes, how much time I have?
Okay, you have like 5 minutes left.
Okay, okay, all right. Final conclusion. Good, thank you for sharing that. So, final conclusion now. Jainism's biggest contribution to Indic thought can be seen as the doctrine of ahimsa and anekantvad. Jains have applied ahimsa non-violence in every sphere by promoting vegetarian food, non-violent professions, rituals, etc. Another unique feature of Jainism is the doctrine of anekantvad, as I mentioned in my talk, which tends to make Jainism one of the least dogmatic religions in the world. This tolerant nature of Jains has undoubtedly influenced Indian society to a great degree. Although Jains were always in the minority in India, they remained extremely influential. With that, I stop here and can try taking some questions, if any.